Aaron Beelner, and Eric B. And you're listening to the Diary of a Little Man's Podcast. All right, we are back with another episode. Sorry we took a week hiatus off. Things are, we get busy. We got lives that we do outside of the podcast as well, but we are back. And we're going to continue with what we did last week, or 2 weeks ago, what we talked about last week. But let's go ahead and get the introduction out of the way. I am Eric B.
I'm Aaron Beelner.
And you are listening to the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast. How's it going, Mr. Aaron?
It's going well. It's been a crazy week, a lot going on. And, we missed last week, but that's because we do have lives. And it's, but we're back and we're going to do a great show. And how have you been? How's San Francisco?
San Francisco's good. I've been busy. For some strange reason, things are picking up on my end when it comes to my other projects that I've been doing. And that's why I had to take the little time off last week to get everything going. But other than that, San Francisco's been great. We just celebrated Chinese New Year, and now we're doing there's the Cherry Blossom Festival in Japantown that we're going to go walk by later on and go check out some food. But other than that, we've been good.
Oh, wow.
We've been good. Yeah.
I love those. I absolutely love those. The Cherry Blossom Festival. There's one, I think there's one in Macon that I attended, which is Macon, south of Atlanta, about an hour and a half.
Nice.
And there's something about that, the spring and just, it's fun. It's fun. Those are cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Aaron, go ahead and continue with what we were talking about last week, 2 weeks ago, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, as I told you, I was reviewing episode 3, and you had mentioned something about, talking to your family members, with this current situation of the pandemic and this horrific thing that has come from this, the idea, the concept, and the actual fact of Asian hate.
Yes.
And, again, this is a universal message. You think about the African-American population, you think about gender, you think about all the different groups that have been marginalized and segregated and discriminated. And the fact that you would tell your family members, and for due reason, I mean, justifiably so, that you would tell your family members, you got to look over your shoulder now.
Yeah.
You got to watch out. You go out in public, you go to the grocery store, you go to a park.
Yeah.
And somebody could do something or say something or physically accost you because of the fact that you're of Asian descent.
Yeah. Because
of the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy. I mean, and if you guys haven't heard or if you guys don't know, San Francisco and other parts of the United States has been plagued with this Asian attacks, and they're usually attacking elderly Asian people. And what they're doing is they're walking behind them, they're throwing them on the street, or they're sucker punching them for no reason. And then they're robbing them for whatever they have, whether it's a cell phone or money. And, Asians, especially here in San Francisco, they don't rely on banks. They like to keep their money on them. And certain times of the week, they know these Asian people go shopping and they carry, unfortunately, hundreds of dollars on them because they like to go shopping. And these thugs, I call them cowards out here because they are. These
Absolutely.
thugs and these cowards, they know who to attack and they know when to attack them. And unfortunately, they're attacking like ladies that can't defend themselves, or older men that can't defend themselves. And what I'm tired of, and this is me, this is my opinion, and this hits close to home because it's happened a lot in the area that I live in, is that you have bystanders there that they will help, but they won't help till they know the person that's attacking them doesn't have like a firearm or anything, because it's, they're looking out for their safety also.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
terrible.
horrific. And what you just said, and I didn't even think of that. If they're carrying certain amounts of money on them, sizable amounts of money, that predatory sense, that premeditated sense that they know that.
Yeah.
They know that they're doing that. And so not only are they physically accosting them, but they're also, stealing from them, what have you, with the understanding they know they're going to get something.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good day And that sounds horrible. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
But for the mugger, for the perpetrator, that they're going after these people, knowing they're susceptible, knowing that they're not going to be able to defend themselves, and knowing they're going to get some loot out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God. When you think of all the things that could come from, I'm sorry, really quickly.
No, go ahead.
When you think of all the things that could come from what we've been going through for the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years with a pandemic, the ugly byproducts of that, like this, where people are being accosted and taken advantage of, it's like, where are we?
Yeah.
Where are we?
I grew up in the 70s here in San Francisco, and I grew up in the same neighborhood that I'm in now. And this is back then was a predominant African-American neighborhood. And if you didn't have friends that were African-American, you were just hanging out by yourself, because the area that I lived in now was all African-American. So I made friends with a lot of, African-American, guys. My group growing up was African-American. So they accepted me as, I hate saying it, but as one of their own, right? So, I can count on them. And it's the younger generation, the ones who I don't need to get a job because I can just go down the street and rob this lady and probably have $100 on her. I can take her phone and sell it for like $200. It's that younger crowd that's going out and doing this right now, because I don't see any of the guys that's my age. The guys that are my age, they're humbled down, they're relaxed. It's the younger generation. And on the news, just if I open up the news right now and I see these people who are arrested, we're looking at anywhere someone from 15 to 18. Those are the ones that are doing it. Those are the ones committing crime. And it's sad. I hate saying the fact that it starts at home, because, if you have a well-rounded, mom and dad, you wouldn't be doing this.
I agree. I think there's a lot to be said about that. I mean, I'm sure, there are some cases, where you can say the home was perfect, what have you, and even that didn't affect it. But I think more often than not, and again, I've used this comedian. I find him to be very entertaining, but also very poignant. Sebastian Maniscalco, who was talking about these things happen, these violent acts happen, and then they interview the parents, and the parents are like, "We have no idea."
Yeah.
And he's like, "How do you have no idea?
Yeah.
How do you not know what's going on in your children? Go into their rooms, go into their lives." He made this comment, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm just saying what he said was entertaining. Of my mom was shaking down my room every day, and he was talking about that. And I said, my parents were the same way. Yeah. My mother was very, God rest her soul. My mother was wanted to know everything that was going on. And at the time, as a kid, 15 to 18, whatever, you're like, oh my God, leave me alone,
Yeah.
But that's what a parent should do. I think if we were to be more proactive, as far as on average, not everybody, there's some great parents out there. But if we were on average be a little more proactive, a lot of these things actually would probably not be the case. The fact that people, especially elderly, cannot go out in public without some type of concern or fear that they're going to be taken advantage of because they happen to be of a certain race.
Yeah.
And they're going to the grocery store and they just want to get their damn groceries and go home. And again, this is for what I love about what we're doing in this whole thing, Eric, is that it isn't just about the little man or little person. These messages are universal.
Yep.
This is just a really awesome perspective to address these universal messages.
Yeah.
And so, when you said that last week about, I told my kids and my family members, look over your shoulder.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. I mean, and that just doesn't go with Asians. That that goes with everybody, right? That goes with everybody. And
but how sad is it that we have to be in a society today where you look over your shoulder because you don't know if somebody's going to come after you.
Yeah. And
for being nothing more than a certain race.
Yeah. And what's sad is our politicians aren't doing enough to settle all this down. I'll tell you a story that happened a year ago. Same thing. A young kid attacked an Asian couple, and
Okay.
he was doing whatever he can, and it was just him by himself. He wasn't with a group of thugs, and he had a gun on him, and then somebody from behind came and hit him over the head with something. I forgot what it was. It was a stick or a 2x4, whatever. Kid gets knocked down. They caught this all on video. And then, the guy helps the Asian couple leave, like get out of here. They call the cops. They arrested the guy. Come to find out the gun was like a BB gun because it wasn't a real gun, right? 3 months later, this kid has the audacity to sue the guy who hit him over the head because he's
to try to prevent him from accosting this couple.
Yeah. And, the guy had a gun. To me and you, a gun is a gun, no matter if it's fake or not. So the guy came from behind, hit him over the head. The kid gets knocked down. And then the family members are trying to sue the guy who hit him because they're saying it was assault on a minor. And I'm like, the minor had a gun that I couldn't
Let's
tell.
talk about that.
Yeah, let's
talk about the gun thing really quickly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Okay. This kid knew, and again, I don't want to get into like a political thing, but just the logic of it, the A, B, and C of it.
Yeah.
This kid approached this couple with what was a BB gun, but he wanted them to think it wasn't a BB gun. He wasn't coming at him with the BB gun going, hey, I want you to know it's a BB gun.
Yeah.
Because they'd be like, okay, maybe he could put an eye out with that thing. Maybe he could, break the skin with it, whatever. But we're not going to be as concerned. That was the whole idea of the mystery of, not mystery, but you know what I'm saying? They're going to assume it's not that. They're going to assume it's a much more than a BB gun. But no, now we're going to use it as a defense later and say it was only a BB gun.
Yeah.
That's not right. No, and that's one thing that our justice system probably should step up on both ends, on all ends.
Yeah.
Where when somebody does something and then they retract it and go, oh no, I was just, and for the kid to sue the person who was helping this couple.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's our justice system, like you said. I think if the person the person who's robbing has the right state of mind to take something and use it as, a BB gun and use it as some kind of weapon for some kind of, action. If they have that right state of mind to do that, then, they have the right state of mind to do anything. And, I mean, it's just, it's the society we live in now.
Yeah. That was, last week's True Color. I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. That was a great, the idea of true colors. Here's another wonderful instance of true colors.
Yeah.
You see exactly where people stand and how they think. And so, we were talking about relationships and leading into this episode. And relationships are, we think about comedians talk about them, people talk about them. There's websites about them. There's everything. There's so many different pathways and discussions and you name it about human relationships, whether it be, romantic relationships, whether it be, platonic, whether it be parent to child, what have you. Relationships are something that we focus on a lot. And, I heard a comedian actually just yesterday. I watched stuff here and there, and how a person's worth is based on whether or not they're in a relationship, whether or not, they have a significant other, determines a person's worth. And I mention that only to say, as a little person, you want to, from the time you understand anything to, I'm like I said, now in my 40s, you want to be like everyone else. You try so hard to fit into quote unquote normal, expectations of, when you're this age, you do this. And when you're this age, you go to the prom. And when you're, and so I think the relationship the concept of that starts in high school, when people start dating, and to go there even further, I had no dating life. I had, I mentioned this in the last episode. I'd asked I was a senior, I believe, at the time, or a junior. It was a senior. No, I was a senior. She was a sophomore. And what I expected of the date, I mean, I was pretty naive, and it's a first date. So maybe we go out to eat and go home. Everybody goes to their own home. It wasn't like it was going to be anything, ridiculous and outrageous and wild. And it was just, I was pretty vanilla. Can I say that? I was pretty vanilla in most of what I did in high school. And, I wasn't by any means one of those in the class that people went, oh man, he's wild and, Mr. Popular and all that. I was nothing of that. And so going back to how, the first opportunity or situation to date, and, everybody has these ideas and expectations of what's going to happen, and then it never happened. As I said last week, she got razzed about it, teased, and it never panned out. And so be it. That's water under the bridge. But the assumptions, you had mentioned like the woman whose parents said, "Hey, you have to date the same race," and the assumptions that come out of life and when you're talking about, whether it's whatever type of relationship, romantic, whatever, same sex, heterosexual, whatever it is in this day and age. But people, how do I say this? People feel it's their right to cast judgment, to cast, or to input, throw input into how they feel. And it just blows me away. And I'll stop talking for the moment at this note. I think I shared this in the previous episodes I went out to Austin for a film festival, and this man who worked in the disability, he was actually like their, representative or their head representative for their organization. And he said, I see this all the time. And he said, and the people are doing it to themselves. You assume, I'm a man with achondroplasia, a man with dwarfism, that I assume I have to find someone else who also has the same type of skeletal dysplasia, and how limiting that is.
Yeah.
It's like, we're doing it to ourselves unintentionally. We're actually discriminating against ourselves and segregating against ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's like, yikes, that's you're behind the eight ball, for lack of a better, cliche. You're behind the eight ball from the get-go.
Yeah.
And then when outside people do it, you're like, oh, just adds more turmoil to it. So, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I wasn't dating much in high school. I was like you. I was trying to be the first, I want to say, Filipino athlete, in my family. So I was really dedicated in my sports and all the sports that I played in. And unfortunately, senior year, I broke my leg. So, the colleges that was watching me junior year, I had potential chances to go to like USC and play or practice with them. I didn't want to say play with them, but I had that chance. But again, senior year, right into when junior year ended, going into senior year, I broke my leg, and all that went down. But like you said, there was kids all around us that was so into like, hey, you got to go check out this girl, or there was pretty girls in our school, but I just wasn't focused on trying to, my dad would always tell me, don't get hooked on the first fish you see, kind of thing. There's plenty more fishes in the ocean, kind of thing. Yeah. Which I totally understood what he meant, because it's like, you see people now, and it's good for them. You see people now that it's like you've been together since high school, so it's kind of like, that's good. I'm happy for you. But then when you speak to the guy, and I've known plenty of guys who does this, it's like, dude, I've only been with one girl my whole life. You know how bad that is? And it's kind of like, well, you got married in high school or after
You
high
did
school.
that.
You
I
did
mean,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, I commend them if it works. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that percentage is really small of success for like high school sweethearts and that age. It's a really small percentage. I mean, when you consider the divorce rate now is higher than, oh my God, flipping a coin. I mean,
Yes.
it's really alarming. But it comes under the precipice of look how it came into that situation. I mean, it's no wonder there aren't even more divorces when you look at all the different factors that were going into I do,
Yeah.
before all the different things that were probably going to be deterrents and going to be negative qualities towards that whole situation. It's no wonder there aren't more divorces. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, that's a great, I mean, honestly, Eric, you did the right thing by focusing on sports
Yeah.
and I focused on other things to distract from the fact
Yeah.
that I wasn't dating and that I wasn't, involved with what all the other cool kids were doing. And I make this joke in my one person show that, I remember like the girls coming to me and telling me I was and I never got paid for this. I should have been charging for the therapy sessions I was giving to these girls who were complaining about their boyfriends and what have you. I was like their teddy bear. They'd come and cry and not cry literally, but you know what I mean? They'd bare their souls and I'd be like, hey, forget them. Try me.
Yeah.
How about me? Let's go out and I won't even touch you. Okay. We'll just have coffee. I'll sit 10 feet from you.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we could just sit in two different booths and I'll talk across the way, and so that was how all of my high school was. And then even into college, I went to a very small college as well. And with that came a very limited, pool of, victims, if you will, or candidates or whatever else you want to call them, or people who would, pity and sympathize. And so it wasn't, it was my sophomore year in college that this person reached out and she was from another state and she also was a little person. And so then, and nothing against that, it was what it was. But I mean, it was also, people who are like, we've got to find somebody who's like me. Oh my God, this person shows any interest. Oh my God, this is the one. And then it was that concept of now I feel like I'm part of, the cool crowd who's dating and loving pure third party confirmation and peer acceptance that I'm doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
My friends are out dating, my friends are doing this and then long distance. I mean, that's the other thing that's a pain in the ass is that, I was at that time I was in my first relationship, if you will, I was in Dubuque, Iowa, which is on the east side of Iowa. I was going to college there. And this person, she was from Middle Georgia, actually.
Okay.
And so just you had a relationship, but you didn't have all of the wonderful factors that other college kids were doing, because they were usually dating someone on campus. Long distance relationships are a bear.
Yeah.
And yeah, it takes a person to go, okay, I can overlook that we see each other maybe once every 3 or 4 months at best. I mean, that was physically seeing each other was probably twice a year.
Oh, wow.
For how long? And so that's the hard part of that. And then, you at that time, I didn't have a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones like we have them now. We had remember the bag phone, like Motorola bag phone. That's what I had, but it was for my vehicle. It was only used in emergency purposes. And so, then you run a phone bill through the roof because you're talking at, how many cents per minute.
Exactly.
And so, if you talked every day for even, 30 minutes long distance, it was like, okay, as a college kid at that time, that was adding up every month. And I remember when I was in the summer, I was working at a golf course in my hometown. And I remember running up now the people are going to laugh because they're going to be like, that's nothing because we pay exponential amounts for cell phone bills nowadays. But I remember my father going, you put $144 on the phone bill? And I'm like, oops, that was long distance, long distance relationship. Yep. I put $144 on the phone bill. And my father was losing it. He was like, $144 for this. And
that's
like,
the average
he's like, what are you talking
right
about? I know. And he's like, what can you possibly be talking about for $144 a month? And I'm like, well, just life and the whole relationship concept and dating, So anyway, that was the ridiculous part of that.
Yeah. I mean, you at least had a cell phone, doing that. We had nothing, we were like still landlined, and we were even lucky to have a pager if we had a pager. But yeah, we didn't even have a cell phone. It was one of those, it was one of those things where if you wanted to try to take a girl out or ask a girl out, you were most likely calling her house phone, having to talk to her brother, her dad. Mm-hmm. And if you got lucky, they didn't ask you any questions. But
right, exactly. And so that was the other thing. I remember this is so ridiculous. I'm glad we started here. This is a great way to start the whole relationship thing. I remember, like, we didn't have cordless phones. Yeah. We had, they were connected to the wall. The cord, connected at like 12 feet of cord or something ridiculous in the one room. So I'd be like, I'd grab the phone and this is so ridiculous. I'd grab the phone that was in what we call, I was raised on a farm. And so we had like a mud room, if you will, the utility room. We call it a utility room or mud room, which had the washer and dryer in it, a sink. And it was designed that way because, anybody that came in from working from the farm, whether you're full of mud or other, anything else from animals, whatever, you could like take your clothes off there, strip down there, and then the washer and dryer were right there. But anyway, there was a bathroom there that had a pocket door. And so, and the bathroom, well, it was a toilet. It was a toilet with a pocket door. And then the sink was like 3 or 4 feet by the washer and dryer. So I would take the phone. This is ridiculous. Oh my God. I would take the phone that was right next to that sink with the 12-foot curly, you remember the coiled cords on the press button phone, and go to that bathroom and close the pocket door and be sitting there. So the cord was stretched out. So then all of a sudden, my parents, my mother, my dad, father, when they wanted me to know that it was time to get off the phone, it was like being a fish on the end of the line because the cord would start jiggling. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And they're like, oh, okay, they're right there. And so then you'd be like, okay, I got to go. So then that moment of, the 30 minutes you had, if that, with your girlfriend who lives 5 states away would get wrapped up because, it was time. And my parents were like, you're paying for this phone bill. You're paying for your part of it. I'm like, okay, fine. I worked all through high school, or now through high school. Started working my last year of high school because I was 16 and allowed to, and then worked through all of college and what have you. So that was part of my money that I'd make in the summer went to a long distance relation phone bill. So no, it's that. So then from there, in college, like I said, I met her in my sophomore year of college. So I was 19. I was 19. Yeah, I was 19, 20, going on 20. And then we went back and forth and what have you. And then after college, I actually moved to Georgia, and I moved to her hometown, and we got to, that's the other thing about that doesn't seem usual, or for lack of a better word, normal, is that when you're part of the disability community and you have a relationship, things happen differently just because of the circumstances. Okay. And people go, oh, I would never do this, or this doesn't work this way. And it doesn't. It usually doesn't work this way for the average human being. But when you're of that long distance relationship and of that, unique circumstances where you're with somebody that's just like you, and there happen to be only so many, we talked about numbers a couple weeks ago or last week about, if you think about skeletal display or you think about people with dwarfism, there may be at best in the US 9,000 people.
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, 9,000 sounds like a lot, but that's not a lot to choose from when the rest of the average world is choosing from 7.6 billion.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying they're choosing it, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's 320 some million, supposedly, humans in the US. To choose from 9,000, if you stick with your, similar disability, that's not that many. And it's really a horrible, and I'm not saying that can't work. I'm just saying it's a horrible governor to have placed upon you to think, okay, and what I mean by governor, is some type of regulation where, okay, I'm only going to choose somebody who's just like me.
Yep.
And even though you're not, before you even get into, okay, I don't know if I like this person, or I don't know if we have similar characteristics. And so, I don't know if we match.
Yeah.
And so I can't even go beyond that right away for where we are as far as a couple, because I'm caught up in the whole, I've got to be with the same person. I've got to be the same type of person. And again, I said this to you a couple weeks ago. That'd be like saying, okay, you have 10 fingers, I have 10 fingers. We're perfect for each other.
Yeah.
And you really don't know anything else. And then you put it on the idea of like a long distance relationship where you're getting such limited amounts of time to be physically with each other that it takes a while. It's, I want to sound like a pity kick. Okay. I'm not sounding like, but it is an unfair disadvantage because you're, and then, so and to be point blank and up and forthright, we ended up getting married, and we ended up getting divorced. We were married in 99 and we were officially divorced, papers, ink dried and papers filed, if you will, in 2011. And I didn't want that. I mean, I didn't choose that. I didn't go, oh God, I'm hoping to get married to get divorced. But things happen and you realize, divides. Yeah. That's the other thing. Whether it be a romantic relationship or whether it be a platonic or whether it be, any type of friendship, divides happen.
Yeah, of course.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And those divides get bigger and bigger over time. And you can't lie about it. You can't ignore it. You can't, it comes to a point where you go, okay, you've had it. I mean, everybody's had it, Eric. You've been in relationships where you go, we're forcing this. Yeah. This isn't working. This is unbearable. And then you throw children into that. And it's I read an article years ago about adult children of divorce. And they're, a lot of parents go, oh my God, this is the worst thing we could do to our kids. And the kids were like, thank God they actually finally went through with it. Yeah. And they were honest about it. So, my mom and dad aren't together, but we're not losing our minds and there's not the resentment in the home and it's much more comfortable. So then you add, any type of, physical difference or any type of disability or any type of unique quality to that. And you feel like a failure, you feel like a real failure. Yeah. And I did. I went through that for a while in my divorce. And then, years, I had, not to go on a diatribe, I had met a person, during my end of my divorce, and I figured that the best thing I've ever learned in relationships is that you should probably try to find your best friend or that you should, before anything else, somebody that you actually can relate to. Yeah. And I'm not, this isn't earth shattering, but it is earth shattering when you come from, a particular challenge or difference that you're just, you don't realize those things until later. Yeah. You're just trying to become what everybody else is. It's kind of like the cool kid. If somebody had Nikes, you wanted Nikes too. Well,
Yeah.
what if they didn't fit?
Yeah.
And what if they're uncomfortable?
Yeah.
So that's with relationships in the beginning of that as a young, immature kid.
Yeah.
That's where you really learn.
I mean,
So
I totally agree with you. I had a circle of friends after high school, college years where all of them were in a serious relationship, and towards the end of their serious relationship, they were all married or getting married. And here I am, the lone wolf who doesn't want to get married, never wanted to get married, but felt like society wants me to be married. And hanging out with them, I was always like the fifth wheel, the sixth wheel, the seventh wheel. And it's just kind of like, oh, and then it came to a point where they were like, oh, Eric, we're going to fix you up with my cousin. Oh, Eric, my best friend is coming along with us. And I'm like, I don't want to be fixed up. I like what I'm living right now. I like the fact that I'm watching you guys enjoy your life. So when I'm ready to get married, I'm learning from every mistake you guys have, or you guys did, or everything you did wrong. I know not to do when I get married. So yeah, it's society, and the way society is nowadays. It's like if you're a group of four and three of the four is married, that fourth person either doesn't want to get married or just, hasn't found that right person that you said, right. You want to find your best friend, and your best friend is the one you want to marry. So.
And the fact that we put a timeline on it, the fact that we put, that people, you got to get this and you ever notice that we do that in life?
Yeah.
Where, hey, when are you doing this? When are you going to start dating? When are you getting married? When are you having kids? When are you retiring? When are you jumping in the box? I mean, it's like we put why we put timelines on anything?
Yeah.
Especially something like a relationship, and expect, I'm going to have Cinderella and the perfect everything and all this. And it's like, no, that's not how reality works. And then, for example, or not for example, from that, I met someone that, it took a while. It took some time because, of course, when you come out of a divorce, you don't want to run right back out there for fear of, oh God, I don't want to have another situation that doesn't work or another relationship that doesn't work. But then you do also hit a point where you're like, oh, maybe I'll just test the waters. Let's see what's out there, what have you. And I was working with this person for a while, and we just started talking and became friends. And I realized for myself, one thing that is super crucial is humor. In whatever you do. I mean, you can go through a lot of things in life as long as there's a little humor thrown in there, that keeps you from cracking. And that was one thing that we shared, is that we were on the same, I think, distorted sense of humor, and that we could, laugh about the craziest things. And so I just let it happen like that. It wasn't forced, and it wasn't, there weren't any expectations. There was just living life and getting to know each other. And so that was important, and learning from the first situation. Okay.
Yeah.
As much as a divorce is, to the outside world, a divorce is a failure and you did everything wrong. It should be also a learning experience. And I think for both parties, and no disrespect to my ex, it should be, this is what I don't want, or this is what I, want to improve. It should be something that you grow from and build from, instead of, you see the people who have 5 or 6 marriages and divorce. No offense to the late Liz Taylor, but it's like, what was missing that there was a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, and by no means judging that. It's just, you'd think you'd be like, okay, what can I do differently, or what, and I think ultimately what you should do differently in any relationship is, or what you should do more often than not, is don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't, I mean, yes, we compromise. Yes, we negotiate. That's, yes, we give and take and give in relationship. But if you're constantly compromising yourself, there's no way that's going to work, no matter who you are. And as a little person, if you're constantly compromising what you want because you think it has to be this way, or you think this is the only person out there, and that's a tough thing too, Eric. I mean, so my significant other now she's average size.
Yeah.
And I only say that because people go, oh, we didn't even think that people did that. We only thought, little people get together with other little people, and you're born from little people, and you must all live under a bridge, and you reproduce by a handshake. And so that's one of my stand-up bits. But anyway,
I like that.
It's well, because they make these outrageous assumptions that you're not human because you happen to be, a person with dwarfism. And so, and I say that to lead into the fact that my significant other's family members questioned everything, oh my God, he's little. And they had questions, and I don't know what subject matter we can get into considering we have certain listeners, but I mean, they asked everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything. Imagine where your mind can go with the questions that somebody could ask a person about their new dating, relationship or new whatever. I mean, literally everything. Yeah. And you're like, oh God. And then I think we had talked about this. There was a person that had said about my significant other that she would never be with anyone like me. And I was just like, I still mean? To this, we talked about this last week, and that took a second for me to absorb. And nothing that's, my significant other didn't say that. She wasn't believing that or thinking that, but just that people were looking at us in that light.
Yeah.
And when you leave your home and you go out into the public world, and there's, this as a man of Filipino descent, there's assumptions and there's judgments and there's stereotypes placed on you and whatever other, unfortunate modes of separation. And you're just wanting to be a human being. I mean, that's all you're really striving for. And yet people are doing that. I have to share this. There's different responses without words by people. Alpha males.
Yeah. I
love alpha males because if they see my significant other and I out in public, they puff up and they're looking at me like, and you can hear in their brains, they're like, dude, there's no way you're satisfying her. And I mean, it's like, dude, get away from me.
Yeah.
And then there's the sweet old lady response, and I say this with all the love in the heart. The sweet old ladies will see my significant other and they look at her, and then they literally they physically pan down. So they're seeing her, and she's not like 6 feet or anything. She's 5'2". I'm 4'3", but there's still, the Sonny and Cher thing going on. And so they look from her down to me, and they do that little, isn't that sweet smile? And you're like, what the hell is that about? And they're like, oh, you can see in their heads, like, oh, this is so cute.
Yeah.
Look she's got her little friend, and it's like, oh, come on. So, I mean, the nonverbal statements can be just as
painful,
detrimental. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I hate that too. And it's like, your alpha male statement that you just said is like, it's not all about, and I'm going to use the word, and I'm sorry if we have young listeners, it's not all about sexual in a relationship. It's about how you can treat that person. Yeah, sex has something to do with a relationship, but it's not about satisfying them or making them, as people would say, rock their world, right? It's about you listening, you being there, you addressing their attitudes, their feelings if needed. And if you're there as the human being that she fell in love with, you're listening to her, you're speaking to her, and then you do the other things you do in the bedroom, that's on you. It has, everyone else, their attitude and the way they think, it's like, why does it have to be like that? Like there's this persona of, if you're with a certain type of race, that race is better in the bedroom than anyone else.
I know. Yeah. And it's like, are you serious?
I hate that persona.
Exactly.
Yeah. I hate that persona.
Oh my God.
Because, okay.
And then don't get me wrong. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying, okay, maybe they are, good in the bedroom and, they do things differently than other people, but how are they physically and mentally with you? Do they take you out to where you want to go? Do they listen to your thoughts and your feelings when you're feeling upset? Or are they that type of person that just says, well, you know what? I'm fine. Can you go grab me a beer? You know what I mean?
Let's go one step further. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Can I add to that?
Yes,
Let's go one step. I think that's a very important part of a relationship. I think that sex and intimacy are very important. But it's not just the physical part that makes that amazing.
Yeah.
It's connecting here and here. It's connecting there.
Yeah.
Okay. And you could have you could both be people that are amazingly, as far as anatomical and whatever, the 36, 24, 36 and the, package, whatever. But if you're not connecting here, the physical act of all of that is awesome. Yes, not questioning that. But if you're not there and there, it gets old after a while because you're not connecting there.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it's like you're just going to the store to buy groceries. And you love those groceries, but you don't have a connection like that. You digest that, you absorb that, whatever. But if it's just that and it's just the physicality of it,
that's it. Yeah. That's all it is.
Then it's not going to last.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, whether you be, whatever race, whatever gender, whatever size, shape, whatever. And that was the biggest thing for me to learn as a person with skeletal dysplasia or with dwarfism. I use that term too much. With dwarfism is that, yes, there are some, and I'm going to be real right now. I'm going to be super real.
Yes, please.
Not graphic, but real. There are some physical challenges in being with somebody who's not, imagine if somebody was 8 feet tall, no matter if it's the male or female or whoever, whatever, and the other one was 2 feet tall.
Yeah.
There's going to be some physical challenges in that. But you adapt and you learn and you discover. And if you care about the person, if you love that individual, none of that will matter in the long run. Yeah, it's not, I can't imagine being with somebody that would be 4.5, 5 feet taller than me. Just because that is quite a physical difference, but doesn't mean it can't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that, it's the same. That assumption is just as horrible as, you have to be with somebody who happens to be the same race, or you have to be with somebody that happens to have the same disability. That's a ridiculous assumption too.
It is. And
so, and again, I'm guilty of this. I'm super guilty of, in the beginning, I'm super guilty of, well, I've got to be with this person and or this type of person because they're like me and nothing else will work.
Yeah.
So that was an unfair advantage I had imposed, or disadvantage I had imposed on myself. And again, I'm not knocking people who happen to have dwarfism who are with other people who happen to have dwarfism. If that works, then you've won. That's great. And you've beat some huge odds.
Yeah.
Because you're coming from such a small, no pun intended, a small pool of choices to begin with. And it's nothing against the individuals in that pool.
Yeah.
But the chances of that working are going to, just on numbers alone, are going to be such a decreased, odds. And so, it's, the whole thing of when I met who I'm with now, and I keep, I haven't mentioned names because I like things private. As an entertainer, I don't want to discuss name for her privacy. I knew that this person was somebody I wanted to be with she was the one, and the person I wanted to be with for the rest of my life, because she saw me in addition to my physicality. She saw my soul, she saw my heart, she clicked with that, and she loved me for my physicality. Sometimes you hear people go, oh, they see that person beyond their exterior. And that sounds to me like their exterior is horrendous and like they're a gargoyle or something, or some type of mutant Skeksis from the Dark Crystal, and it's like, no, okay, their exterior isn't, turning that person off.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, we have such unbelievable definitions of what beauty is. And that old saying, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So be it. I may not see, you may see my significant other and go, oh, she's going on, but that doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
And I may see this person and, oh, that doesn't do it for me. But that's not meaning that everybody else feels the same way. And so I get pretty intense about stuff like this, because I think that as humans, we still have a long ways to go when it comes to empathy and acceptance. We're very good on judgment. We love to judge. We love to, cast judgment and go, hey, for example, I've used this 8 million times now. Well, that person would never be with someone like Aaron or someone like him. I mean, we have such ridiculous audacity.
Yeah.
To do that to anybody in this planet. We're looking at a war going on in on the other side of this rock right now, and people make assumptions and speculations about what's really happening. Yeah. And the reason I mention that or anything is that unless you're actually in that person's shoes, you have no right to be saying anything. You can have an opinion, absolutely, but for your opinion to be cast on others and accepted as, well, this is the way it is, I think that's what we really need to work on as human beings. Sorry,
you're right.
I went on a soapbox there.
No,
Sorry.
I mean,
I went nuts.
It's good. It's true, though. I mean, it's like, this whole thing, we started talking about relationships, and everyone assumes everything, like your standard or stature when, someone looks at you and your significant other, and they're like, there's definitely no way he's satisfying her. They're assuming that they think that because they don't know you, they don't know her. All they know is what they're looking at, and we do that all the time. We do that all the time. It's, to me, I use the example of like I have teenage boys who are trying to buy a car, and they're looking at the car on the outside, but they're not looking at the car from the inside. And here I am. I'm like, hey, you got to make sure this car can get you from point A to point B, because the outside looks nice, but what about the inside? So
it could be a lemon. It could be a lemon on the inside.
Yeah. And that's exactly how society is when it comes to people. They look at, I get that stereotype all the time. And I told you before, I work in healthcare. And when I'm in the room and I'm taking a patient, it's always the elderly patients too. It's never the young ones, the millennials or anything like that. It's the elderly patients. When I start speaking, the first thing they say is like, wow, I never knew your English would be so good. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. And,
yeah, I mean, how do you respond to that? I mean, that's a horrible, it's like a double-edged, or what do you call that? Compliment, where it's like it's a double-edged compliment of, oh, I didn't think your English would be.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean by that? Because I happen to be of Filipino descent.
Yeah.
I mean, my God.
Yeah.
That's the assumptions that are behind that.
Exactly.
And the isolation behind that.
Yeah.
And the derogatory insult behind that is heinous.
But that's how people is. That's how people are.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm guilty of that as well. There's times where I look at someone and, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh God, I wonder if their English is good, and then they speak to you and you're just like, oh, wow, they do speak English and I do understand them. I'm guilty of that. I do that. I don't want to say every day, but that's just how society is. We judge by how a person looks.
We're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
You and I, and not all the time, but I'm gonna make this statement and puff our egos up a little bit. We're all guilty of that. Yet you and I have the wherewithal, along with hopefully more people, to not speak our inner monologue all the time.
Yeah.
your thoughts are your thoughts, and you can't necessarily control what comes into your head, but you can control what comes out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And I was reading a person that I follow on Twitter who was talking about abling, and the concept of not prolonging. I'm at a lack of what the word, but continuing certain stereotypes and whether it be based on race, whether it be on gender or physical, discrepancies of not even knowing, like you just said, the person who said to you, "Oh, I didn't think your English, would be that good." And it's like, based on what? What are you assuming?
Exactly.
Where are you coming from with this? I mean, let's be honest. There are how many people that come into this country who their English or, their ability to speak this language that we consider the majority is rocking some of the people who were born in this country.
Yeah.
Okay. That has nothing to do with race. That has nothing to do with, it has everything to do with what you're exposed to. It has everything to do with education. It has everything to do with what you have accessible to you.
True.
There are people that are 100 years old that live in this country who do not have the finest grammar. That doesn't make them less of a person.
Yeah.
It makes their communication skills, a challenge. But that I get incensed by that, Eric, and to the point that now I'm going to come off as angry dwarf. Here we go. That when you make an assumption based on anything that the person can't ultimately control, race, gender, sexual preference, and I'm going to say this now, and it may offset some of our listeners. Sexual orientation to me is something you don't choose.
Yeah.
You are what you are. You feel what you feel. Okay. I have many friends who happen to have a different sexual orientation than me that talk to me about like this conversion therapy concept and whatever. And it blew me out of the water because I didn't even think something like that would exist, where you're trying to control someone's mind to adapt to the norm. And I just did air quotes. I know I should be shot for that. But it's like, I do get incensed about things like that, where people make such ridiculous assumptions. And you can do that, fine. But then to impose them out loud on somebody and make them feel that big, what audacity, what ignorance, what absolute BS. And I get that. I feel, and it gets me hotter now being a parent, where it's one thing if that shit happens to me.
Yeah.
But when my kids go through that, and granted, I've told my kids, as you've told your children, the real world is not easy.
Yeah.
And it's not candy corn and cotton candy and amusement rides all the time. You're going to face things and people who are not going to be cool and not be nice. And yet it does still incense me at times when I see my kids go through that. And I go, we're in 2022. And are there any people that can be not assholes?
Yeah.
And, my significant other is really big on that. And I have to share this, and this adds on to the relationship thing. I remember when I introduced her to my kids are both little, and my oldest one at the time, the words out of her mouth. Well, at that time, this is, I don't even know what the age was, how old she was at that time. When I first introduced her just as a friend, that was 10 years ago. So you're thinking, like 2011, 2012, 10 years ago. My oldest would have been 10 at the time. And out of the mouth of, just her thought process. Now, again, I'm not, my significant other is 5'2".
Yeah.
It's not like she's 7'8". Okay. But I'm 4'3".
Yeah.
So 5'2" seems pretty big. Anyway, my oldest one said, well, we now have somebody who can reach the tall stuff. And I thought, that is awesome. She's sitting there making it practical.
Yeah,
and I thought, that's a great, she goes, we finally have somebody to reach the she said high stuff. That's what it was. She goes, now we have somebody to reach the high stuff. And I thought, okay, my oldest one's worried about whether or not we can get that, off the top shelf of the grocery store, which, by the way, we need to talk about that someday too. The grocery store experience for a little person or anybody who's in a wheelchair. You can't imagine if I had a nickel for the people that work at grocery stores looking nervous when I'm climbing the shelves or trying to knock something off, which, by the way, I will give us little people some credit today about that. We are good. We're really good at knocking something off a shelf and catching it.
Yeah.
If we can't climb into I've had my kids stand on one side of the cart while I'm climbing on the other side of it to balance the weight so the thing doesn't tip on you, to reach up and grab things. But I have knocked off glass jars. This is brass, Eric. I'm just letting it all out today. We're going for broke on this one. I have knocked off. This is where my significant other really does help a ton to go to the store. I've knocked glass jars off of a shelf and then caught them.
Yeah.
There's been one time where that didn't work, and I missed it. And there was, I think it was marinara. I think it was spaghetti sauce all over the floor in the grocery store. And I'll tell you what, they were very cool about it because they could have went, "You idiot." You could have just asked. But, you get tired of asking for, "Hey, can you help me with this?" Nowadays I do because, with liability, we're such a litigious society and liability and lawsuits and yada, yada, yada. But, a lot of people never consider when you go to a store as a person who happens to be 4 feet and 3 inches tall, and if you just shop the bottom shelves, you can get some really great cereals and stuff. But when you want the things that aren't on bottom shelves and you don't have anybody around, you have to take some chances. There was that one. There was the sauce one. And then there was one. I was so stupid. I should have known better. I was climbing a shelf and they were not I think it was chips. And the shelves weren't that sturdy. And it collapsed.
The whole shelf.
Like shelves. It was like a domino.
Oh, okay.
Like, boom, 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 boom. And they knocked each other out. And I think I was in bags of tortilla chips. Just around me. And it was loud. Oh, my God. It was loud. Just boom, boom, boom. And then the chips and the rustling of the plastic bags and everything. It was loud.
We have chips in aisle 12. Chips in aisle 12.
You're like, you get over the intercom. Some idiot in aisle 12 just knocked down how many rows of chips? And they come around the corner. Those people came around the corner. Nobody was in the aisle. That's why I was climbing the shelves. Because you get to a point where you're like tired of waiting.
Yeah.
You're sitting there going, maybe somebody will come around the corner and help me with this.
Yeah.
And you don't want to bother anybody because they're doing their jobs, whatever. But I've now decided, I was laying in bags of chips because they collapsed. They were copacetic about that too because they could have just lost it. Like, dude, you just destroyed this. But they didn't. They picked it back up. People were very nice. I don't think there was a lot of damage. I don't even think I ruined any of the chips. I might have broken one bag. But no, it's life as a little person. Yeah. And so,
but it also makes you wonder, right? It's like these people who are doing this. I'm 5'5". I'm like probably the shortest of the average male size. I'll go into Safeway or Target just like you, and I still have a hard time reaching whatever's on the top shelf. And I have to go and, I don't ask for help. I won't climb the shelf, but I'll take something that I can get and I'll use it as a tool to try to, shimmy it over closer to me. And that's if I can get it. If I can't get it, then I'll go say, hey, but it makes me wonder who was building these shelves.
I know. And they're like 20 feet off the ground. I have gone, now we're on a roll with this and we'll have to get back to relationships, but we can't let this go. I've gone to another aisle where there'd be a device I could use, like in the cleaning products aisle.
Yeah.
I've used the toilet brush. I've used a mop, put that in my cart, went to another aisle to use it to tip something, then got it, then went back to the aisle because I didn't need that product. Yeah. So then I'm hanging that stuff back. Your trips in the grocery store can become longer than you wanted them to be because you got to think, you become like MacGyver, you're creating something out of nothing. And then your engine, I'll tell you what, people with and again, I make light of it, but it's actually fairly serious. Any type of person that isn't the quote unquote average or normal individual, or what they call normal, I guess, you got to have some sense of ingenuity.
Yeah.
You've got to have some sense of adaptability, because if you don't, you'll get eaten alive.
Yeah.
I say this to my kids all the time. The world's not going to adapt to you. My father said this to me, and my father was average size. He's like, this planet isn't going to adapt to you. You've got to figure out how to work around it. Yep. And I think that we give our kids a horrible disadvantage when we don't teach them that. We have a world now where everybody thinks, oh, it's all supposed to work out for me. It's just supposed to happen for me. That's not real.
No, not at all.
That's never going to be real. And so when you teach anyone, when you learn as a young person to improvise, not only I love improvising on stage, but when you learn to improvise in life, it helps. It gets you where you need to go. Because if you go, oh, well, this doesn't work out, this is unfair, you're going to be constantly behind the eight ball. You're going to be constantly at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Now your physical disability or challenges become a mental disability and challenge. And I'm not talking about like mental disability of some type of, genetic, chemical, whatever imbalance with. I'm talking your thought process now becomes a disadvantage to you because you say, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I used to, and this sounds very, juvenile, but I played basketball in junior high. I stopped playing, in high school because they're not going to put that kid in. They're not going to put that kid in. Anyway, and people, used to laugh, whatever. We talked about this during the sports mention, but I could hit behind the 3-point line. I don't know if I could do that anymore. I'd have to get back into it and work out more.
Yeah.
But I could hit, at that age, I could hit behind the 3-point line. So I used to always say, hey, yeah, you may be able to dunk a basketball, but 3 points is more than 2.
Yep.
So when you have that mind frame and you have that ability, I think you can accomplish anything.
Yeah.
I really do.
This is a good topic that we can talk about in next week's episode, talking about the difficulties of just going out to do your day-to-day routine, your day-to-day work. Grocery shopping, is one of the things that I know. When I was sick and I had to go around with a little scooter that they provide at the stores, and I had to do this by myself, I couldn't reach even the third or fourth aisle because of that. So for someone who is disabled in a wheelchair or someone with dwarfism, what are the struggles you have when you go there? And these stores, they're not making it accessible or easy for people with disabilities who can't reach that, fifth, sixth, seventh row. And, that's something society, we don't think about every day.
Let's talk about that next week. I think that you titled it already. Let's talk about day to day, and we can add more in the relationship thing and whatever. And if anybody's got questions, like I said, I'll answer anything, literally anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't think knowledge, we should shy away from knowledge. Yes, I know we can be intrusive with our questions, but on the other end of that, I think any type of, and I've had, and I'll close with this, and this is a zinger. I'm sure people are going to go, oh God, I'm never listening to this thing again. One of the things in relationships that comes out when you have someone, like I said, my significant other is average size. And one of the things that comes out is the assumption that because, and I'm going to be point blank with it, and Eric's going to blush. I can feel it. He's going to be like, oh dude, you're nuts. One of the assumptions is that everything is in proportion. And that because you're a little person, everything must be of that. And I don't want to get graphic, right? And I'm not a bragging. It's like, oh yeah, I'm, like a Palomino or anything. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that idea, that assumption on their part, and that whole stereotypical thought process, beyond just being a little person, beyond anybody in the disability community, for anybody that's not the, what we consider the quote unquote norm or average.
Yeah.
That's really disabling.
Yeah.
It's really ridiculous that we make assumptions and that we, go, well, you have to be like this because this is what I think.
This is exactly.
Well, no, you don't. And I think we see this in government. I think we see this in politics and in certain schemes of thought that, well, if I think it's this, then that's how you are.
That's exactly.
And that's the unfair impression cast.
Yeah.
I think that's where people really get upset, whether it be racism, whether it be sexism, whether it be ageism, is you're thinking like that, not you specifically, you know what I mean, but you're thinking like that. And the fact that you're casting that upon me is immobilizing.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree.
Let's talk about day-to-day next week, or in our next session.
Yep.
Yeah, we should.
You guys have any questions, you guys can email us at thediaryofthelittlemanspodcast@gmail.com. You could also follow us on Instagram, the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast on Instagram. This has been fun. I mean, these are real life topics that
yes,
you go through every day, and you sharing your story. I totally, really, greatly appreciate what you're doing, because you're putting out a lot of information that a lot of people would like to know. And, I admire you for your bravery and sharing the story to everyone else. And, we'll go from there next week.
Let's talk about, if I may, Eric, before we wrap, let's talk about, not today, but in the next episode, let's start with the spaghetti sauce. Yes. I forgot. It just came back to me what all happened in that. And there's a lesson there that I think will lead into the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And we can and address things. And again, thank you for everything, people who are listening. And if you have questions, please. Yeah. And the relationship thing, we can add, more to down the road as well. But yeah, it's really, this is great because it's almost, it's a catharsis, but it also gives me the appreciation for others. Yeah. The appreciation for others who have even greater challenges than I face.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, if we all would just maybe try, I mean, it's impossible figuratively, it's to put ourselves in another person's shoes.
Yeah.
But if we just try a little bit more, we'd be better off.
Totally understand.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. This is the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast. We'll be back next week. See ya.
Adios.
You've been listening to the Diary of the Little Man's Podcast.